Yeah, for the whole price of the car. And now with the new rules, it is done the measure of the original content by different sections of the car. And if we divide it in three main, which are the core parts, all the car parts that are moving for that make the car move, like for example the engine, the wheels, that has to account for almost 70% of regional content to get all the benefits from USMCA. In the past, it was 60% for all the car. Now it's 70%. And it's the same for all the other non-core parts, like the seats, like the seat belts, like the radio. And more important, I think that they foreseen to attract actually foreign direct investment are the electronic parts in where the Chinese companies have a great advantage around the world, and in where actually there are few companies in the region which are competitive on that side. And that now has to account for 60% of regional content. If we do the numbers, actually in my area, it's one of the things we do, we run the numbers and do those kinds of analysis. And the regional content, the electronic parts, like for example, all the flat how you call flat screens on the cars and all the electronic devices and the computers, the regional content is not larger than 25%. And there's where a huge opportunity, where we can find a huge opportunity for foreign companies to complement their value chain. Well, now I'm going to talk about Mexico and give you a little bit of context of who we are and what we are as a country and where does this opportunity to rely. Why Mexico? It's a great partner. First of all, our GDP in 2019, before the pandemic, was around 1.3 trillion US dollars, and that put us in the ranking as the 15th largest economy in the world. We have for our GDP, it could be divided. Well, it's divided. We're mostly a service country, in which the tertiary sector accounts for 60% of the Mexican economy, while the secondary, which is manufacturing and all the industrial side, accounts for the 29% of Mexico economy, and the primary sector accounts for 3%. Next, please. When we see the GDP by sector, we can see the relevance of the industrial sector for Mexico, in which mostly all the manufacturing side represents almost 2,000 billion US dollars, in which we will see that the most representative industries are the automotive industry, the electronics, and some medical devices. The interesting side and where the opportunity relies in most of these goods produced in Mexico are the low level of local content. It only accounts for 25% in average of all the manufacturing goods producing in Mexico. And that creates an opportunity around 350 billion US dollars. And it's mostly on these goods that come from Southeast Asia, some of them from China, and it's where we can find a huge opportunity to contribute to the value chain, to the regional value chain, and to add value, and of course, to take advantage of the different trade agreement that Mexico has. Next, please. Oh, by industry, well, what I was telling you, the automotive industry is the most important industry in terms of manufacturing for Mexico. And in addition to the automotive, also the auto parts, mostly for OEMs, is the largest part. We don't have a large share on the spare parts, auto parts, but it's mostly all the goods that go straight to the OEMs. Next, please. In terms of international trade, how does Mexico, which is Mexico's structure? We have 13 trade agreements which give us perfect access to 50 countries around the world. And nowadays, we have more than 200 trading partners around the world. We basically do business with almost every country in the world. And we said our exports are $461 billion, and our imports are 455. Our trade balance is positive by billion dollars. And it's relevant to highlight that mostly that the balance on the total trade of Mexico is given by the oil sector, because mostly our manufacturing sector and our other industries always have a positive balance, and the gain or losses are mostly given by the oil prices, which could be a little bit tricky sometimes. Next, please. That's what I was telling you. The oil and gas industry is actually the one who always makes the trade up and down. But mostly on the industrial sector, we have a positive trade balance. And it's important to highlight that there's a huge relationship between Mexico and the rest of the region. You can tell that the U.S. is our main uh, commercial partner, our main trade partner in the world. But it's not mostly because of the goods that they consume as a final goods they consume. It's mostly this high integration between value chains of the three countries. And there's a lot of trade between these intermediate goods coming back and forth from the US to Canada to Mexico in order to provide value added and to export to the rest of the world. In terms of sectors, which are the most relevant on our exports, basically the non-oil and gas, which represent 95, almost 95% of our exports. And as you can tell, we can divide it by three. We will divide it by three. First, consumption goods, capital goods, and intermediate goods. And the three of them are really relevant. And I would like to focus mostly in the intermediate goods because it's where this huge relationship between the region it's been made, where all the bonds are created. And in addition, in the terms of sometimes the consumption goods go out from Mexico, sometimes from Canada, sometimes from the US. One great example is the aerospace industry, where the largest plants are located in Seattle, for example, for Boeing, and the rest in Canada, mostly the Montreal side. But a large part of the intermediate goods that get inside those large airplanes are produced in the north of Mexico. Next one, please. And when we see the exports by industry, that's perfect. We can tell that the largest accounted for that are automotive industry and electronics. And as I mentioned it before, in the electronic goods, we have a high number, but we have a low added value. Well, not value, low local content. As I told you before, the average is 25%, but particularly on the electronics good is less than 10%. So the opportunity to add value to these value chains is really large. And there's where the opportunity, well, one of the largest opportunities for the Chinese companies we can find. Next, please. We can skip this one. Thank you. Oh, and our partners. Which are our main partners? As I was telling you, the USMCA accounts for almost 84% of all Mexican exports. And it's main, as we're seeing it more and more, and actually after the 2008-2009 financial crisis, this relationship start to increase. And the relationship right now, the correlation between Mexican exports and US exports it's 1 to 0.8. So basically for every dollar the US export, Mexico exports 80 cents. So there's a close relationship that had increased since 2008 and 2008 to 2009. And something that I guess it's also relevant for Chinese companies, it's all the vulnerability that many companies saw during the first month in the pandemic, where all these global value chains were broken because 33% of the intermediate goods of the world came from China. And as soon as China get into this lockdown because of the pandemic, the value chains start broken around the world, and it hit hard to many industries, many mostly to the automotive industry. So many companies are thinking of moving or having operations or to having local clients or clients closer to their production facilities. So it's changing and reshaping in some way the, the how the large corporations or the OEMs are thinking, and it also gives an opportunity to or reinforce this opportunity to invest closer to your market and invest closer to their facilities. And in that sense, Mexico it's one of the greatest locations in the region for that. When we can skip that one. It's a little bit repetitive with what I always said. In terms of imports, the thing I would like to focus, I already mentioned it, it's the intermediate goods. It's where the opportunity lies and where the most value can be added. It's a market that in which value it's around $352 billion. And if you want to put it in perspective, how much money is that? Is almost equivalent to Singapore's GDP or Israel's GDP and even Ireland GDP. So it's the opportunity is larger than some developed countries, and there is a huge room to increase given all this demand for electronic goods that have been increasing in the last months given the pandemics. And with the pandemics, it's not something that we think it's gonna end when the pandemic is over. I think it will all these huge changes we have seen in the ways do things right now, with all this long distance home office and all this availability facility to do, for example, like what we're doing today, having this conversation. This actually will boost or will help me boost the electronic demands, and this also will increase these numbers and this opportunity. Next, please. In terms of countries, you can tell who are our main partners. We see that the US accounts for 45%. It's not as large as what we have them. It's a partner for us, but China has a relevant place here. It's the second largest commercial trade partner of Mexico, accounting for almost 20% of Mexican imports. And all those imports are mostly related to intermediate goods that we use to develop all the goods that we export to the rest of the world. Next, please. In terms of imports, it mostly goes to electronics, but on the side of intermediate goods. I'm sorry, I maybe sound a little bit repetitive on that side, but I truly believe that there is where the opportunity lies for the Chinese companies or for the foreign companies in general. Next, please. We can skip this one too. It's quite repetitive. Oh, this is quite an interesting topic, the advanced technology products. This is a classification developed by the Census Bureau of the US, in which they classify all the goods that they consider relevant as advanced technology or sensible technologies. And they did it to foresee where are their main partners and which are the goods they are importing from other countries. And in this side, Mexico accounts for 15% of all the US advanced technology products, and we're the second largest partner to this country. Actually, China right now is the first partner, and given all this tension, we thought there's a strong possibility that their likeliness to change partners it's somehow strong, at least where some of the projects are coming. And this were another large opportunity to realize. And it not also shows the opportunity that Mexico has as a global ATP exporter or producer, but also it reflects the capabilities of the Mexican market. As the Mexican market in terms of how the human resources, the availability of human capital to develop of these goods, the capability of the country to absorb new technology and develop new advanced products, And with addition to these statistics, we also have this economic complexity index in where Mexico has the position number 20 all around the world, and it will also give us it will also show how good is Mexico adopting new technology and producing new technology. In terms of advanced technology product, where is Mexico located? Which are the main products that we develop for the world? There are, just to not get you confused with the figures you've seen before, this is a sub section, if we can say it, from the rest of the international tariffs. So into the CIAN, no, it's NICE. It's in the US, right? North American International Code System. Yeah, from the NICE. So it's a subsection of this. It doesn't include all the goods in each industry, but only those goods that are accounted as advanced technology. As you can tell, Mexico has a strong participation in medical devices, in automotive industry, in the aerospace industry, in electronics and electrical. So it tells you which are the strengths of Mexico in regard of these industry sectors and advanced technology. Next, please. In advanced technology, which are the exports, it's like this is the picture from the world, which are the exporters by countries. As you can tell, China have a large share on this market. Also, Canada, the US is the largest one, but there's still a huge opportunity to increase the share on these advanced technologies. In terms of foreign direct investment, there's how is it composed in Mexico? So mostly almost 50% of the FDI corresponds to manufacturing, and it mostly goes to the automotive industry and the electronic. Those are the main strengths, and where we can tell the rest of the world see the opportunities in Mexico. It's not limited to those industries. Actually, as you can tell, those industries are the door to develop more advanced technologies, or also to develop a not as advanced product, but some spare parts that can contribute building up that value chain in where all this opportunity relies. Next one, please. If we break down the foreign direct investment, we can tell where there are some in services, but mostly the manufacturing accounts for almost half of it. And in terms of, I will jump a little bit out of this presentation. I told you about the opportunities by industry. I already told you the why Mexico is a good opportunity, that we have the capability, the human resources, the infrastructure. Well, the infrastructure will tell you a little bit later, but how much the opportunity is valued. According to an analysis we made in Bancomex, and this methodology was based on products that Mexico already have at least a 10% of the USMCA market share, and the increase how much does this share? We can share this. We can increase our market share in the region. So based on that, we identify that the low-hanging fruit opportunity for Mexico in the electronic sector account for $28 billion. In the automotive industry, it accounts for $11 billion. In capital goods, it's around $6 billion. In the aerospace, it's around $300 million. And in other industries, it is also $10 billion. We did also from advanced technologies, we find that in the ITC industry, it accounts for almost $55 billion. And for other kind of electronics, more accurate, it's also $10 billion. Just to give you some numbers and to provide you where those where those opportunities relies. And we have some data, which are the main, how we can tell it, which are the main opportunity areas, and actually which are the goods and services we have opportunity on. In terms of infrastructure, we have a good infrastructure with all around the world. We have several ports actually that links between China. We have the largest, how we call it, the largest trade cross with the U.S. The Claredo is the one who crossed mostly to the U.S. and has the largest trade. It's the largest and the busiest border cross between the U.S. and Canada and Mexico, which also tells you the relevance of the region. And they see us as a partner also because we provide goods for them to create new jobs there. There's this close relationship and this between both countries that help us do business easily on that side of the world. And in our doing business, now I would like to go a little bit down, please, to the opportunities mostly, and to the steps to start a business. Exactly. First of all, the first thing to start a business in Mexico is to get the authorization by the government, given the name, then to constitute a company. Sometimes there are some how do you call it? Some not restriction. You have to give advice to the authority when it's a foreign direct investment and making sure that you're not investing on a forbidden area, which is actually only oil and gas. So I think there will be no big problem. And to start a business, it could be in 7 simple steps, which I guess it's common in all the places in the world. But it will take sometimes, given the pandemic, but it's not a complicated procedure to establish a company in Mexico. And I guess that's all from my side. I don't know, Shu, if you have another comments or if there are any questions from the audience.
Now let's welcome Yu Xu, the Executive Director of Prodenza Group.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. So thank you, Mr. San Juan, and he has shared with us a great deal of information about Mexico and Mexico's role in the USMCA. So here I will be sharing with you USMCA supply chain, the shift, and what the implication have for the Chinese companies. First, with the background, what's the shift we see? Here I will go really fast. Mainly it's to the top 50. Know what I'm here. This slide is from standing point to US. So what US, the top trading partner, just make really quick comments is Mexico became US the top trading partner from 2019. And then in the 2020 has a little bit down, but in the first quarter of 2021, Mexico back to be the top trading partner. And the second one is Canada. So you see the trends. Oh, sorry, what's going on? And here's a more detail. I can also go really fast. So first, this part is Mexico's import, US import from Mexico. That's the US export from Mexico. And here is a US import from Canada. and this US export to Canada. So you see the overall the trend is growing, the trade in North America. As someone already mentioned, there's 50% of North America trade is intermediate products, so which reflects is integration of value chain among the North America. Here it's more detail. So what's the top 15 products US import from Mexico? So first you see the first three actually is all automotive related. It's over 30% US import from Mexico are automotive or the parts. Here the US export to Mexico. So again, the top for the export to Mexico is still automotive, and the second one is semiconductor. Here's the US import from Canada. As we all know, Canada is more natural resources country. So the first one is the crude oil, but then second, third, and those three are still automotive related. And what US export to Canada. So here it's really interesting. The top three still automotive related. So that's why you see automotive is the biggest industry in the whole North America. Here I want to have a summary about what a supply chain shift, what we see in North America. Actually, we see maybe all around the globe. The first one is Biden's Buy American Act, which means in the defense or government institutional relation purchase need to be made in the United States. So not even Canada or Mexico. And second one is invest in critical strategic industries, such as advanced manufacturing, defense industry, aerospace industry, etc. This one, shorten regionalized supply chain. I believe most of companies, we have witnessed those change because first of the 2019, the US and China's trade tension. And then we have the pandemic in 2020, so there was a lot of disruption in the supply chain. So most of the companies now look to more regionalize the supply chain. And the interesting about this government is more tend to cooperate with allies for the supply chain shift, for the supply chain relocation. And again, the last one is diversify suppliers. What we have seen with some of our customers, even though they know maybe the purchase price in North America is a little bit higher, but it's for the resilience, from the resilience standpoint, they would like even to have some suppliers still in Asia, but they still develop suppliers in North America. And here I'm going to focus about manufacturing and supply gap in North America. This is a little bit of background. What's this here with the whole North America manufacturing employment. What you see here is the darkest, which means by number of manufacturing employment. So obviously California now maybe it's not ideal what we top of our mind that manufacturing state, but has because of population, so they're still in overall amount. California still has a lot. Then you see the Texas, then you see the Great Lake area, Northeast, and then Mexico. What we mention here, because supply chain usually tend to be concentrated in area where it's the most manufacturing. This is the percentage of manufacturing, people employed in manufacturing industry versus overall population. So here you will see in Mexico border state, actually Mexico overall is really manufacturing country. So you'll see it's really a lot of manufacturing employment concentration in those states. Here I want to talk about the US top manufacturing sectors. So this the order is the blue part is the portion imported, and the gray part is the domestic made in US. And this is mainly by the order. So chemical product is the top one, US made in, as Houston, we all know that is the energy capital of the United States. And then even though one point, the automotive in US, it's a top fourth manufacturing sector, but still the import is double than the made in local. So what here want to try to see is the most imports, which area has the most import, it's what the company try to localize or regionalize the supply chain. And this one is Mexico. What is the import is the same order, import and what is domestic. Here, again, the freight transportation is more like automotive related industry. And then the steel industry, that's the two biggest import in Mexico. Here I will go rather fast because the USMCA already mentioned mainly the regional content, but another thing very important Martin mentioned is 70% of steel and aluminum must be purchased made in North America. So that with that give what is automotive industry suppliers gap, what you can see. So Mexico actually, all those process, stamping, foundry, machinery, automotive interior, semiconductor, of course, there's no semiconductor in Mexico, die casting mold. So all those process have a lot of opportunity in Mexico. Then I will give a summary about what's the opportunity or implications for Chinese company. As this is as we already discussed, the shortening regionalized supply chain, it's a trend to stay. So we don't see that a lot of time we are talking maybe the 301 will, the tariff will go away, but now we're still seeing like more folks to closer to market. The companies react is more to diversify, regionalize the suppliers. So this we see that will stay. And also the USMCA provides a legal framework, but also and the certainty for the region, but also really important for company investing in the region. Doesn't matter if in US or in Mexico, in Canada, the same rule will apply. Then what to consider while you are planning the North America footprint. And then the last one is how to take advantage of Mexico's strong manufacturing output. Here, the first point, I just want to use some examples to show what's the supply chain relocation. First one is one of our customers do crankshaft. So they came to Mexico actually due to their customer request in 2017. So they come out quite well because once the trade tension starts, they're already in full production, and actually the business doubled in 2019. And automotive supply, that's quite many. I just use one example, the tier one. They have R&D and sales office in the United States, but the factories in Mexico mainly is due to USMCA local content requirement. And then we also have a consumer company. They are facing, they are not like intermediate goods. They are facing their markets in the United States. So that they are setting in Mexico currently still. So try to avoid the 301 tariff. And also what we have seen actually from late 2019, we have seen the request has not even been double, it's tripled. And we have seen some new industries, especially like electronic. Before, we don't see that much, but we have seen more electronic suppliers. And the USMCA implementation. Here, I just want to stress even though USMCA is about trade, a trade agreement, but the one thing really important is about the labor chapter. It's to unify worker rights and condition, and also about workers' freedom to choose a union. And this has, we have seen already movement. US can complain any company in Mexico if they are not meeting that rules. And what to consider when you are looking at North America footprint. So first of course, is identify each business is different, identify what are your primary drivers, and weight the importance. So here we are just put two different examples. Some is labor intensive, and some company are more capital intensive. Mostly a capital intensive, also the energy consumption is high. So mostly the capital intensive companies are mostly based in United States, whereas labor intensive companies tend to look more in Mexico side. So here, and also when you are looking at your footprint, consider your cost to drive, qualified labor, and then the supply chain resilience. So not only about the efficiency, now we talk about how to mitigate the risk in your supply chain. The last one, especially for Chinese companies, are really important to evaluate well rural region. So not always when you make in Mexico or making in US automatically qualify you for the rural region. So it's good to do the analysis first. The last summary is just given talking about Mexico. We already have talked about strong manufacturing base, everything. Here, I just want to show something. It's a labor cost affected in exchange rate. So in the past 10 years, mainly Mexico's labor cost didn't increase due to the exchange rate. If dollarized Mexico's labor cost, it's almost still the same. And here about, I know several companies ask about the incentive. According to our experience, we see bigger incentive package in US than in Mexico. However, it will be worthwhile to consider that the overall tax burden. For example, it's really common in US, different states has state tax or property tax. And for example, Texas, we don't have state tax, but then we have quite high property tax. Other states, there's have higher state tax. In Mexico, doesn't have state tax, neither property tax. And also one thing important to consider, like FTZ in United States, Mexico has a program called IMAX, which is really can give certain tax benefit and which is really common use of foreign companies in Mexico. So due to time, I'm not going to elaborate the IMAX, but if you have any question, you can put in the question box later, we can discuss later. Here just want to show the where are those companies, IMAX establishment. The border area, very closer to US, obviously has more IMAX establishment, mainly obviously the manufacturing companies. And then you see the central, where it's more automotive industries. In the gray area, it's more Mexican beach. So it's, so here's, that is overall my presentation, but I know it's have been going through really fast. So feel free to, if you have any question, you can ask us later. Thank you.
Thank you, Yushu. Now let's welcome the managing partner from Yuan & Chen law firm, Mr. Chen Fan.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Fan Chen, managing partner from Nguyen Chen LLP. First, I want to thank you, CGCC Houston, and its current chairman, Mr. He, and executive director, Ms. Liu, who give our firm this opportunity to speak along with star speakers and in front of so many powerful members of CGCC representing a wide range of industries. Is very difficult for me to follow fantastic presentations by Mr. Huang, San Huang, and from Mexico, and Ms. Yu, executive director from Prudenza, a prestigious consulting group, helping foreign companies landing in US and Mexico. But I will try my best. And second, I like to make a disclaimer. This is a professional habit, being an attorney. So today's presentation is only for educational purposes and does not constitute legal advice. And I'm not an expert on USMCA, this subject matter, or foreign trade. However, myself and my legal team with 20 plus team members have more than a decade of extensive legal practice in related areas and we have assisted hundreds of Chinese clients, corporate entities, and individuals over the years. So we have closely watched any legal or policy changes or developments which could impact Chinese multinationals. That's why we have to study USMCA. And thirdly, before we start today's journey together, USMCA is so complex that there's no way for me to cover everything within 20 minutes. I will try my best to highlight some key topics and issues which would impact Chinese multinationals. After my presentation, if you still have questions, please feel free to contact myself for a copy of PowerPoint presentation or additional questions. If you do not have my contact information, you can contact Miss Liu Lingyi, 她有我的直接联系方式。Okay, let's move on to next slide. So there are a lot of acronyms or special terms under USMCA. First, USMCA stands for US-Mexico-Canada Agreement. Such agreement went into effect on July 1st last year, taking over the old NAFTA, 北美自由贸易协定。那么 this agreement is creating more balanced reciprocal trade supporting high-paying jobs for Americans and grow the North American economy. And also this agreement creates a more kind of level the playing field for American workers, including improved rules of origin for automotive industry and other industries. And also USMCA supports a 21st century economy through new protections for US intellectual property and ensure opportunities for trade in US services. Finally, new chapters covering digital trade, anti-corruption, and good regulatory practices, as well as other chapters will become the new features under USMCA. USMCA 北美墨加协定的话呢，是北美三国形成的一个更紧密的经济体，也同时为美国工人带来了更多的实惠。因为呢，我们今天的讲座主要是英文的话，我会在关键的地方插一些中文。好 ，Next slide。林毅 if possible,
yes.
Can you remind me if I reach that 5-minute mark?
Okay, well.
Thank you. So look at this sort of comparison table between NAFTA, old NAFTA, and the new USMCA. First, there are just so many changes. We can only highlight some of them. First, dispute settlement mechanism changed from trilateral to bilateral. Basically, one party's failure to designate an individual to the roster of proposed panelists will not prevent establishment of a panel. So make easier to set up this dispute settlement mechanism. Revision mechanism, before there's no such mechanism, under USMCA, then every 6 years, signatory parties or countries can revise this. A lot of USMCA new chapters and provisions were not even in existence under NAFTA. So these new rules include anti-corruption, exchange rate, labor protections, energy sector, intellectual property protections, digital trade, and environmental protections. They are brand new provisions. Some of them, they have their own chapters under USMCA. These new rules impacting a lot of, for example, this new chapter for small and medium-sized enterprises, we call it SMES, 中小型企业，有一个专门的一章专门是保护中小型企业的利益。And also for automotive industry, there are a lot of new rules, so complex, we cannot even have time to dive into. But one thing is that knows attention from us, increased regional value content, RVC requirements for automotive industry. So under USMCA, there is a raised overall RVC requirement from the current 62.5% to 75% for passenger vehicles and light trucks, phased in over either 5 years or 3 years, depending whether you're going to average. So next slide, rules of origin, 原产地的这个规则。那么 we can look at this. First, under USMCA, there are preferential treatments to signatory countries. So basically, rules of origin encourage to keep the manufacturing in the territory. When I mention territory, we talk about all 3 countries within this USMCA territory. Basically encourage keeping the manufacturing inside territory, encourage movement of finished products within the territory. And also say, for example, chapters 4 and 5 of USMCA contained provisions that regulate rules of origin and origin procedures that will apply to all goods exported within the territory. And USMCA relaxes such rules for certain sectors, including chemicals, but tightens the rules for automotive, just like automotives and steel, like Mr. Yu Xu mentioned in her presentation. For automotive rules of origin, that rules incorporate new requirements such as a high percentage of regional steel and aluminum content, and also first of its kind labor content rule with minimum wage requirements. And finally, USMCA also increased de minimis percentage from 7% to 10% of all non-originating materials to consider a product as originating. So spend a little bit of time on this de minimis threshold. Increase from 7% to 10% actually is a huge increase. So the value of all non-originating materials used in production that do not undergo the required tariff shift, if it is not more than 10% of the total transaction value or total cost, then you may ignore that content, provided all other requirements are met. So for example, that when you look at the total value of goods, if you got 8% of your goods not meeting tariff shift, and you can get your goods in and remain eligible for preferential treatment. And next slide. Rules of origin challenges and opportunities. 这个产地原则的话，对 中国企业构成哪些挑战和机遇。那么 first, let's look at the challenges for Chinese multinationals. So tighten the rule of origin products manufactured in the territory with Chinese inputs. So on top of that, the US-China ongoing trade war continues to make situation worse. So to some extent, the country of origin under USMCA, along with this trade war, have disincentivized investment and production in China. So Yu Xu and Mr. San Huang, they mentioned that there will be a shift of this global supply chain. That means before a lot of investment production focus in China, now there will be changes. And the second point, another challenge is China-based automotive businesses must implement coping strategies in order to adapt to this global supply chain shift and in order to enter US market. And another challenge, Chinese companies going to face stricter customs enforcement. And also there will be more record-keeping authority requirements for Chinese companies that already operate inside the territory. It would be a new challenge for Chinese companies to maintain necessary books and records in order to comply and show proof of compliance of USMCA rules in order to qualify for preferential treatment upon demand from the authorities. Opportunities for Chinese multinationals, we can glance through like global chain, supply chain, so we can participate in this upgraded global supply chain. And also that for North American made cars in global market, because of the cost advantage to Chinese automakers. So that means maybe we can become more competitive in other markets. And the next opportunity is foreign automakers would not be hard pressed to diversify their investments in non-North American markets. China, for example, is still a major car market in the world. Another opportunity is diversification of non-North American investment becomes viable and beneficial because everyone still remember how hard the Trump administration negotiated the USMCA with Mexico and Canada. I think the Trump administration last year, they obtained some compromises from Canada and Mexico, but these gains are short-term at the expense of losing US long-term power, like leadership and trust among its allies. So its allies like Canada or European countries may seek other countries as their investment destination alternatives. Next slide, intellectual property protection. Due to time limit, I just want to quickly go through this. So there's a new chapter under USMCA for intellectual property protection. And this is a huge change. I'm going to highlight, for example, copyrights increase by 20 years in terms of protection. And also that there are comprehensive enforcement provisions under USMCA, such as the chapter requires actually criminalize and impose sanctions for unauthorized recording, like camera recording of movies, frequently used to sell pirate movies online. 我们大家平时有的时候还是会在网站上看到一些新的电影出来，那么就是 under USMCA， 就是有可能是这种做法是刑事犯罪的一种，会受到处罚。然后呢 we have other provisions like digital trade is no longer subject to any tax duties, and so on and so forth. And let's move on to next slide. Because that intellectual properties and digital trade are intertwined, so I discussed them together. Let's look at challenges for Chinese multinationals. For Chinese companies, now we have to comply with US IP laws. For example, we have to file trademark registrations, filing a patent application with USPTO, and providing sufficient documentation in a timely fashion. And also that violating companies will be exposed to civil and criminal penalties for their activities. 我们最近有段时间呢，也经常有这个中国公司的话呢，他们在亚马逊电商在美国卖产品，或者是在美国他们已经有了实体经营，包括这个仓库啊、办公室啊，在中国有工厂，但是呢，最近也频繁的受到律师函或者是法院的临时禁令，涉及到他们卖的这个产品有可能侵犯了美国公司的商标或者是专利。Now we switch to opportunities for Chinese multinationals. We just discussed in new chapter digital trade under USMCA. The following opportunities are self-explanatory. 大家可以简单的看一下。Means less custom duties and also less discriminatory measures. Minimize the limits on data storage and processing facilities, and also less governmental authority. And let's move on to next slide, labor. 林毅，我们还有多长时间？
Yeah, we still have 10 more minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Next slide, we're talking about the labor protections under USMCA. So the United States, Mexico, and Canada have agreed to a labor chapter that brings labor obligations into the core of the agreement, making these provisions fully enforceable and represents the strongest provisions of any trade agreement. The following is a direct quote from Department of Labor website. The USMCA has the strongest and the most far-reaching labor provisions of any trade agreement. So let's look at some major achievements. First achievement, worker representation in collective bargaining. So the labor chapter includes an annex on workers' representation in collective bargaining in Mexico, and in which Mexico commits to specific legislative actions to provide for effective recognition of the right to collective bargaining. Second achievement, labor rights recognized by International Labor Organization. And third achievement, enhanced labor enforceability. The dispute settlement chapter establishes a first of its kind US-Mexico rapid response mechanism, providing for monitoring and expedited enforcement of labor rights to ensure effective implementation of Mexico's landmark labor reform at particular facilities. The fourth major achievement, new labor value content rule, which is LVC. To support North America jobs, the deal contains new trade rules of origin to drive higher wage by requiring that 40 to 45% of auto content be made by workers earning at least $16 US dollars per hour. 你们大家可以做一个换算，这样的话呢，这种最低工资的要求的话呢，相当于一个汽车工人年薪在$32,000以上。那么大家可以看一下，这样的话呢，中国的汽车工人和墨西哥的汽车工人相比的话，会出现在接下来几年的话，墨西哥工人的这个劳动力成本会上升，也会造成这个在北美市场生产的汽车的成本也会上升。玉旭，is that correct? My prediction?
There's a pressure, but the 40% can also count the R&D. So if you can have R&D in US, so that also counts. So not only workers, because worker that will be too much.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to next slide, challenges and opportunities. For challenges for Chinese nationals, we can go through this. So first, must consider, this is typo, LVC, labor value content rule, when outsourcing to Mexico. And also for Chinese companies operating inside territory, you have to update wage and hour policy when necessary. And also your labor certification may require production of business records in the future. And when it comes to labor content, this labor value content rule, when outsourcing, the companies must now pay closer attention to the labor practice by the supplier and keep record in order to show proof of compliance upon request by authorities. And in practice, business record may be requested for production by authorities. Record keeping, bookkeeping, thus would be very important for companies in its daily operation. Opportunities, of course, there are opportunities for Chinese multinationals as well. That means less competition from low-wage competitors for USMCA-based multinationals. I guess you should mention there are some mechanisms that US companies and Mexican companies can cope with to keep their costs low. And also more leveled playing ground or playing field for US-based companies. Less competition from low-wage competition, as they would be facing higher tariff, which simultaneously increase competitiveness for US-based companies within the territory. And let's move on to next slide, customs. When we talk about customs, we will immediately think about CBP. To many Chinese importers, exporters, they don't like this organization or this government agency, Customs and Border Protection, and because they enforce the law at the borders. So we're talking about under USMCA, that means less red tape at the border, reduced cost, and increased predictability for cross-border transactions. And also, the new rule raised the de minimis customer thresholds for low-value shipments entering Mexico, US, and Canada. So CBP understands that the trade may need time to adjust the business practice to comply with the new requirements under USMCA. That's why there was a 6 months trial period. And now the trial period is over. CBP is back and they're going to enforce more stringent rules under USMCA. So we have to watch out. And also for newly created de minimis rule effectively help many e-commerce business to avoid cost in obtaining documentations and tariff. So there will be booming e-commerce under de minimis rule. For example, that the following shipments are not subject to customs, duties, taxes, or formal entry procedures as long as they fall below certain threshold values. For example, for shipments coming to Mexico, any value below US dollars, $50 or less, not subject to duties and taxes. And between $50 and $117, not subject to duties, but tax still apply. For all the shipments entering United States, if the value is $800 US dollars and less, then the shipment, the goods are not subject to duties and taxes. Let's move on to next slide, customs, the opportunities and challenges. I'm going to quickly go through this. So challenges, stricter or more stringent customs enforcement will be expected. Opportunities, of course, free duty, more business opportunities for SMEs, and no tariff on digital goods. Okay, let's move on to next slide. Slide relating to COVID-19 risk. So basically, today we spent a bulk of my time highlighting USMCA new changes and rules. They are so complex. I can only give you a taste of that. But given the current, still ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, I want to use this as example to showcase how and what can a Chinese company operating inside the United States can do in terms of compliance, in terms of minimizing risks, using COVID-19 as example. So first, you can look at the risks can come from three major forms. One is contractual liability. For example, due to travel bans or disruption of international transportation. So a lot of contracts last year, I was told, got canceled or cannot fulfilled, and a lot of disputes arose last year. So we didn't look at the draft of these documents, the contracts, including these major clauses. And I noticed that as a custom or habit, Chinese companies, they only engaged American attorneys or professionals like consulting professional or accounting professionals toward the end of the negotiation. So a lot of times we were engaged, our firm was engaged when the negotiation was almost over. So we just need to review the final draft, but that will be too late. And another form of liability come from tort liability. For example, injuries took place at the workplace. Employees or customers can got infection by other employees or other customers with COVID-19. So if the employer does not have a plan to protect everyone on its site, then it might be liable. And we're talking about insurance can help you. You can buy workers' compensation or business disruption, but a lot of times, especially for insurance carrier, they exclude COVID-19 coverage. And another form of liability comes from administrative, civil, and criminal liability in terms of lack of compliance with the laws and regulations. We're talking a lot of federal, state, and local government agencies watching us when it comes to safety and health, COVID-19 related. So there are a lot of violations. For example, that the government, when they receive a tip, they're going to investigate, audit, and initiate administrative proceedings, civil proceedings, and even criminal investigations. Companies may face administrative, civil, and even criminal punishment. Executive managers of Chinese companies, board of directors, individual employees may face civil lawsuits or criminal prosecution. And let's move on to the final slide. So basically, this is a real case. Our firm recently engaged by employer from New York State because recently this specific company is considering reopen, bring every employee back to the office. So we helped this company come out with this reopening plan. Basically, we prepare a toolbox try to make a comprehensive assessment, and then we draft, help work with the clients with drafting all kinds of templates, policies, notices, and memos, helping guiding HR directors or managers navigating through this difficult and unprecedented time, which is COVID-19 during pandemic or even post-COVID-19 era. We're going to continue to provide legal services, helping Chinese multinationals successfully operating in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chen Fan. So now it's our Q&A session. And I do receive a couple of good questions regarding today's topic. And first of all, what is the restriction on exporting raw material from China to Mexico? Yushu, do you have any answer? Or Jose?
I would ask what's the exact raw material first.
Oh, the guest didn't specify.
Yeah, usually it's no like specific restriction, but if you are like a chemical, obviously for chemical material, we'll have some special requirement, but for sure you can export to Mexico. Mm-hmm. Or if you are some steel or textile, those material, there's special requirement, but you can export to Mexico, yes.
I see. So how about the electronical factories? Will they shift their business to Mexico? Or there are already some existing products or in the factories over there?
I will answer first, but maybe Jose has the overall more view from the Mexico civil government level. We do see more electronic companies shift actually in recent like 2, 3 years, because before most electronics are made in China, so it's from outside we do see more. And also Jose mentioned about the advanced technology, so electronic actually is part of that US and Mexico are really promoting for the supply chain relocation.
That's correct. In addition, I would like to add that there's also a large base of third-party manufacturers like Flextronics, Jabil, and Foxconn with operations in Mexico, mainly focusing on electronic devices, and some other independent companies also doing the same kind of work, aiming to facilitate the production of all these goods in the country.
That's all? Okay, thank you, Jose. So I got a new updated question regarding the previous question. So how about construction materials shipped from China to Mexico? Is there any restriction on that?
That's again, construction steel, for sure, there's anti-dumping that I won't suggest there's the construction steel. But other construction material, we have seen some customer, for example, they're building their factory in Mexico, and obviously it's by local constructors, but they do import some materials, but really again, then go more to detail which material.
I see. So we have another guest asking, does Mexico has any organization similar like OSHA in America, Mr. Chen Fan?
Oh, I have no idea.
You don't know? Okay.
But
you don't want to
I,
make a guess?
I think, but I really want to ask either Yu Xu or Mr. San Juan.
Jose.
Yes.
Exactly.
This
There
new
is.
concept. I'm asking
Yeah.
this new concept of near shoring as opposed to offshoring. This is brand new concept to me.
That Mexico has exactly the same. Also, almost called like OSHA has exactly the same organization. OSHA, that's a requirement, same requirement.
Same function.
Yeah, same function, same requirement.
Okay, so this guest is asking, how about import major commercial truck components like chassis, battery, motors into USMCA for final assembly? Do you see any big obstacles and the strategy to deal with it? Who wants to answer this question?
I can do it. There is no big issue on doing the import from these big products and assembled here. The only thing that will be missed is the benefits of the USMCA and the other trade agreement that Mexico has. That will be the only, how you can say it, that will, not barrier, but it will be the only downside of going that way. And in addition, it needs to be the goods must fulfill all the requirements of the all the US or Mexico requirements in terms of normativity. So they, in order to sell that to the US or to other markets, that will be the only requirements.
I see. Thank you, Jose.那我们这儿还有一个嘉宾，他有一个问题是，这个 e-commerce 从墨西哥发往美国是否涉及从美国居民信息保护的问题？这个陈律师您了解吗？还是应该交给 Jose？呀，
这个关键是涉及到这个它指的是信息保护是美国这方面的管制还是墨西哥这边？
我看到提问是我们这个中国电信的直涛 ，Charles 你在吗？请他帮我们。哎，直涛，嗨，
你好，
嘿
就想问一下，因为美国不是有长臂管辖对一些居民信息各种管制嘛？你延伸的话，它对于保护是不是有些特别的美国方面的要求？美国侧，就是因为不是墨西哥本地或之类的，我不知道会不会涉及之类的。因为美国对于这类信息方面的管制比较多嘛，有些东西不知道会不会有这方面的限制或要求或之类的有没有？但是全球方面也有，所以我不是特别清楚。比如说全球的e-commerce也是来回的发，但是这方面因为这个管辖范围不知道会不会有这方面东西，不知道啊，所以就问一下。
就是涉及到这个我们今天讨论 USMCA 的话，实际上这种管制的话呢是减少的，但是的话呢因为涉及到如果是来自中国公司。即使你是处在墨西哥，从墨西哥发到美国的话，那么还会有其他的法律或者是政策，甚至是 executive 总统的行政令，涉及到这个比如说内部包含什么样的 material 敏感信息，所以我觉得还有其他的一些法律规定。
OK， 那有点复杂哈，明白。
好。那我这边谢谢志涛。好，那我这边 so far 没有收到任何新的问题了。陈律师、玉旭、Jose, do you have anything else, other comments to add to our presentation today?
I just want to ask Yu Xu or Mr. San Juan, and this nearshoring concept. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, for sure. Shu, I don't know if you want to start with this or you want me to take it.
I just had a comment. It's mainly it's before we have heard about a lot globalization. So mostly it's like the supply chain has become really long, like global supply chain. It's like so mainly it's a reason after USMCA, after the trade disruption due to different reasons, either pandemic or trade barrier. So then companies are more looking to localize, which means the special automotive industry, they want their supplier to be close. Also for the time of response time. So the automotive is really just in time, right? Delivery. So they want to be supplier, like even some company we see, they want their supply in US and in Mexico. So even to that. So that's nearshoring from the company standpoint, it's because of that need. But Jose, maybe you can talk more about some macro standpoint.
Oh, thank you very much, Shu. Yeah, actually, what you say is actually pretty accurate. And more than giving it macro, I can give you a couple of examples on real life. For example, on 2011, when this big tsunami and earthquake hit Japan, with all the Fukushima event, I remember that Honda had a plant in Mexico and in the US. Basically, they were producing their Model CRV. And given that they have all their production on just in time and just in sequence, they didn't have a large stock of their auto parts. And there was a particular plant close to Fukushima that supplied one particular piece for all the CRV models. It was the only plant in the world who developed that. So actually, that broke down the value chain of Honda for that model. And after that, they decided to have operations in other countries. And in 2019, at the middle of 2019, that happened to the main automotive companies like Ford and Toyota. That most of their supply chain was focused on one country in particular. I think in this case it was China, and they couldn't produce some cars or some models because they didn't have the spare parts. So actually, the COVID-19 started to accelerate this process of nearshoring, and also with the nearshoring, we're seeing a particularity on regionalization of the production and consumption, which the main objective is to be closer to the market in order to provide the speed to market fulfillment, and in addition to reduce those risks on the value chains, on these long value chains, and you have more certainty and somehow to cover the plant in case of any problem. Another example we foreseen in the statistics of Mexico. There's a large facility of engines in the north of Mexico, and suddenly we start receiving a lot of input from Thailand. And what we see is that the Mexican plant didn't shut down completely. It was on a refurbish. So basically, the production was being replaced by the plant in Thailand, and the other way around a couple of years later. So it's been a strategy developed for the countries not only to achieve the local content, by the company, sorry, but to reduce the risk, to be more, to have a faster reaction to any situation they were not aware of. So I guess that's most of I can tell about the nearshoring, the relevance, and why it's important for the companies to adopt this model.
Great, that's very informative. And Mr. Chen and Yushi, you have covered everything? Great. So
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chen Fan, Mr. Yushi from Prudenza Group. Mr. Chen Fan is a manager partner from Yuan Chen Group, and also Mr. San Huan, and all of our speakers today for your incredible work and informative webinar to provide us. So much appreciated all your time and effort. And to our dear guests, thank you all for attending today's event. Please stay tuned and we look forward to seeing everyone at our next event. Thank you again. Please visit our website at cgcc.org for future events. Have a great day. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. San Juan.
Mr. San Juan, stay in touch. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You
Yeah.
have my contact info.
Yeah.
You can
I
call me
will get
whenever
it
you
from,
need.
Yu Xu. Yes.
It
We're
will be a
going to
pleasure.
see you in person in Mexico
Yeah.
City.
Yeah, for sure. That will be a pleasure.
We really want to see you in person.
Oh, thank you. That
Thank you
would
for
be
your
awesome.
time. Yeah.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
invitation. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.林毅，非常感谢邀请啊，谢谢。
没有应该的程序。